Less than 2 decades ago, the remote island was facing an environmental catastrophe caused by an explosion of rats and mice.
A peaceful island turns into a nightmare far away in the Southern Ocean. Lies a small island called McCary Island. At first glance, this island looks like a peaceful paradise home to birds, seals, and penguins. For thousands of years, the animals on this island lived without fear. Birds laid their eggs on the ground, seals basked on the shores, and penguins waddled around freely. The reason everything worked so well was simple: there were no predators. This perfect balance made McCary Island a rare and beautiful place. But that balance didn't last forever. In the early 1800s, seal hunters discovered the island and began using it for their own needs. While they hunted seals, something else came ashore: rats and mice. These animals arrived on the ships and quickly made themselves at home. At first, the change was subtle. No one could have imagined the impact that these small creatures would have. But the truth is, these rodents began quietly destroying the island's fragile ecosystem. It was the beginning of a disaster that would leave scientists, environmentalists, and the world in shock. The rats had no enemies on the island, and they found plenty of food. They ate bird eggs, baby chicks, and even plants. These birds had never seen predators before and didn't know how to protect their nests. The rats took advantage of this and caused huge losses in bird populations. What made things worse was that the problem didn't stop there. People tried to fix it by bringing in other animals, thinking they could control the rats. But each new introduction only made the situation worse. What started as a quiet problem soon became an out-of-control environmental nightmare. McCary Island was on the brink of total collapse. How the rats took over everything. Rats that came to McCary Island found a land of opportunity. There were plenty of underground bird burrows, fresh plants, and no predators to stop them. Over time, they multiplied by the thousands. Since the birds had never learned to protect themselves, because they never had to, rats could steal eggs and eat baby chicks easily. Birds like petrels and albatrosses, which once filled the skies, saw their numbers fall rapidly. It wasn't just birds that were affected. Insects, native plants, and even the soil started to change. The balance that had lasted for centuries was now breaking apart. The mice were just as damaging. While rats focused on birds, mice turned to insects and seeds. They destroyed insect populations that were needed to pollinate flowers and keep the soil healthy. They also ate seeds before they had a chance to grow. This stopped many native plants from growing again. Slowly, the island began to lose its green cover. Hillsides that were once filled with plants turned into empty, lifeless patches. And all of this was happening while most people had no idea the problem existed. But it didn't stop there. In an effort to deal with the rats and mice, people introduced cats to the island. At the time, they thought cats would hunt the rodents and solve the problem. But the cats had other plans. Instead of hunting rats, they began hunting birds, especially the ones that couldn't fly. These birds were easy targets. Some cats even killed birds for fun, not just for food. Scientists later estimated that around 60,000 birds were being killed each year by cats, and yet the rats and mice continued to thrive. The cats had created an entirely new disaster on top of the old one, the arrival of rabbits and the next disasters. If things weren't bad enough already, someone had another idea: bring rabbits to the island. In 1878, rabbits were introduced so that any shipwrecked sailors could have something to eat. But once again, the people didn't think about what would happen next. Just like the rats and mice, the rabbits had no natural predators, and they found the island perfect for living. They started eating grasses, herbs, and small plants. Before long, the rabbit population exploded. By the late 1900s, there were over 100,000 rabbits eating their way across the island. The rabbits were more destructive than anyone expected. They didn't just nibble on plants, they ripped them out from the roots, destroying the landscape. Some of the plants they ate had been on the island for thousands of years. Without roots to hold the soil together, the ground started to fall apart. Hillsides collapsed, and water washed away the topsoil. The island's surface became bare and dry, with deep cracks and landslides. Places that were once green and full of life turned into dusty, lifeless zones. And with less food and shelter, even the native animals began to suffer. The biggest tragedy came in 2006. When a massive landslide hit a king penguin colony at Lusitania Bay. Scientists had warned that the land was becoming unstable, but no one expected such a fast disaster. Around 500 square meters of land collapsed, burying hundreds of penguins alive. The world was shocked. What had started with rats and mice had now grown into a full-blown environmental crisis. It was clear that something had to be done, but even the solutions came with their own problems. Trying to fix what went wrong by the late 20th century, scientists and environmental experts realized that the island was in serious trouble. The cat population, meant to solve the rodent issue, had become predators themselves, causing major damage to the birds. So in 1985, a plan was put in place to remove every single cat from the island. It took 15 years, but by the year 2000, all 2,479 cats were gone. At first, it felt like a big victory for conservation, but once again, nature responded in an unexpected way. With no cats left, the rats, mice, and rabbits returned in massive numbers. Their populations grew faster than ever before. By 2006, there were over 36,000 rats, 100,000 mice, and 300,000 rabbits on the island. The rabbits ate every green plant they could find, and the rodents continued attacking birds and insects. Some plants became so rare that they only survived in small, fenced-off areas protected by humans, without strong roots in the soil. More landslides followed. The very attempt to fix the problem had, sadly, made it worse. Scientists realized they couldn't remove just one species at a time. If they really wanted to save McCary Island, they would have to remove all the invasive animals at once, a much bigger and more expensive task. Still, it was the only hope left for saving the island's original beauty and biodiversity. This led to one of the largest and most complex pest eradication projects in history. Millions of dollars were spent, helicopters were used to drop poison, and teams of experts worked for years to track and remove every last rabbit, rat, and mouse. The real lesson, a chain reaction called trophic cascade destruction on McCary Island, wasn't just about animals fighting over land. It was a deep, complex event known as a trophic cascade. This is when changes at the top or bottom of the food chain cause unexpected effects all across the ecosystem. In this case, a small number of rats and mice cause changes in bird life, plant life, insects, soil, and even the shape of the land itself. When people added cats and rabbits to fix things, it only made the cascade stronger and more damaging. The story of McCary Island teaches us that nature is deeply connected, and one small change can lead to massive problems if we're not careful. It also shows how important it is to understand the environment before we interfere. The people who brought cats and rabbits weren't trying to harm anything. They were just looking for solutions. But without full knowledge, those solutions ended up creating new and worse problems. By the time the world realized what had happened, many species were already gone forever. Today, scientists study McCary Island as a powerful example of how easily ecosystems can be broken and how hard it is to put them back together. It also serves as a warning to be very cautious when changing natural environments, especially isolated places where the balance of life is more delicate than it seems. Can the island ever recover after years of destruction and failed attempts? To fix things, a massive project was finally launched to save McCary Island. Between 2010 and 2014, helicopters flew over the island, dropping specially made poison baits to eliminate the rats, mice, and rabbits. Experts stayed on the island for years to make sure not a single rodent was left. They even used trained dogs to sniff out the last hiding pests. The project cost millions of dollars, but it was a success. By 2014, the island was officially declared pest-free for the first time in over 150 years, now for the first time in generations. McCary Island has a chance to heal. Native plants have started growing again. Birds are returning to nest without fear. Scientists are watching closely, helping where needed, and learning from the past. But the island still carries scars from lost species, eroded hills, and ecosystems that may never fully return to what they once were. Still, this story offers hope. It proves that even when damage seems permanent, nature can recover if given a real chance. But it also reminds us that we must never take that chance for granted. The heroes with 4 legs and cold-nosed dogs became the heroes of the mission. One of the most famous was Wags, a yellow Labrador with a keen nose and tireless energy. Wags was paired with handler Melissa H. Houghton, and together they searched, day and night. The dogs worked in all weather conditions, sometimes for weeks without seeing another person. The handlers and their dogs covered over 90,000 kilometers on foot. That's like walking around the entire planet twice. Their mission was simple, but crucial: find the last surviving pests, no matter how well they hid. Every time a dog barked or paused, it could mean a big discovery. Wags made one of the most important finds. She discovered a rabbit den hidden in a remote part of the island, containing an adult and her babies. This was both terrifying and encouraging. It was scary because it showed pests could still be hiding, but also reassuring because it proved the dogs were effective. After that, more teams and dogs joined the effort. They searched 24/7 in all kinds of terrain: snow, wet marshlands, icy mountainsides. Each successful detection brought the team closer to their goal. By 2013, they had gone months without finding any pests. Still, no one was ready to celebrate. The stakes were too high. Even a single missed rabbit or rat could undo years of hard work. So they continued searching for one more year, just to be sure. Then, on April 8, 2014, the news everyone had waited for finally came. McCary Island was officially declared pest-free. After more than 2 centuries of damage, the island was free from rats, mice, and rabbits. It was a moment of triumph, relief, and hope. But the question remained, could the island heal itself? After everything it had gone through, nature's incredible comeback at first, the island looked tired and worn out. But then something amazing started to happen. Seeds that had been buried under the soil for years suddenly began to grow. Native plants returned, some of which had only survived behind protective fences during the infestation. The famous tussock grass, once chewed to the roots by rabbits, now grew taller than a person. Beautiful giant herbs like McCary cabbage and stilbocarpus spread across the landscape again. Slowly but surely, green returned to the island, and it wasn't just the plants. The birds came back too, species that had stopped nesting on the island, like the blue petrel, the gray petrel, and the white-headed petrel, returned to breed for the first time in decades. These birds had once been common on McCary, but rats had wiped out their eggs and chicks. Now, with no predators to fear, they started nesting again in huge numbers. Some bird populations began growing at rates of 10% per year, something scientists called almost unbelievable. With more birds came more bird droppings, which helped fertilize the soil. Healthier soil helped plants grow faster. The plants gave birds shelter. It became a positive feedback loop, everything helping everything else to thrive. In a few short years, McCary Island began to look like its old self again, or maybe even better than before. What we can learn from this story of McCary Island teaches us a powerful lesson. Humans can cause great harm, but we also have the power to fix it. When rats and rabbits were left alone on the island, the result was disaster. But when people chose to act, to invest time, money, and effort into fixing the damage, nature responded with an incredible recovery. Today, the island is under strict protection. Every visitor, scientist, or worker is checked carefully. Shoes are clean. Backpacks are inspected. Even the smallest grain of dirt is checked to make sure no invasive species return. That's how seriously the authorities take it, because they know what's at stake. And this story is not just about one island. It's a message to the whole world. We often hear about the damage humans are doing to the planet: deforestation, pollution, climate change. But stories like McCary Island show us there's also hope. With the right actions and determination, we can restore nature. We can bring species back from the edge. We can give life a second chance. All it takes is teamwork, science, and the belief that it's not too late. McCary Island went from being a near-dead zone to one of the greatest environmental comeback stories of our time. And if it can happen there, maybe it can happen anywhere. Final thoughts. The island that warned the world story of McCary Island is more than a tale of rats and penguins. It's a powerful warning about how every action we take in nature has consequences. What started as a small group of rats became a major ecological disaster. Trying to fix things without full understanding only made matters worse. It wasn't until people worked together, learned from their mistakes, and used science and care that the island finally had a chance to heal. Let this story remind us to respect the natural world, protect it, and act wisely, because once an ecosystem is broken, putting it back together is never easy, and sometimes it's impossible.